second biggest monkey head I've ever seen.
I used to be an adventurer like you. Then I took an arrow in the knee.
The definition of insanity.
Hello and welcome to episode 36, damn it, of PvA Radio. I am your host, Luke Croft. Joining me, as always, freelance gaming journalist Cody Mellowkline. Cody, how are you doing, my friend?
Doing well. It's hump day. Getting over that hump.
Yeah, man. Yeah, it's a short week for me, so tomorrow is Friday. I get Good Friday off, which is...
Same here.
Oh, nice. So we're well past hump day for you.
Yeah, I'm flying home this weekend too, so I'm super excited.
Sweet.
Nice.
And that sultry nice you heard coming over coming over your radio waves was the man voted
Gus.
The man voted most likely to have a cane sword, Larry Hunt. That's a little allusion to something we're going to be talking about later in the show. Larry, how are you doing, dude?
Dude, I'm doing great. So I just sank a ton of money into making my bedroom very sleep friendly. I've got a pillow I love. I have blackout curtains, so it's always night in my room. And I bought this ridiculous alarm clock that a half hour before your alarm is set begins to slowly, incrementally work its way up to lighting up like a sunrise. So
that's pretty sweet.
I feel very well rested.
Larry is miles down the road on his Abolish the Sun initiative. He's gonna have his house sigil just printed on blackout curtains.
and my kids are finally both sleeping in their beds, and that's the big change, dude. Parenthood, the worst thing about parenthood is you have to commit to like 2 or 3 years per kid of not sleeping, and it's awful.
Yeah, that as if I needed any more reasons. This is PvA Radio. We get together every week over here on twitch.tv/PvA Radio. Normally on Mondays at 9 p.m., but had some scheduling issues come up this week, and so instead we are doing this on Wednesday at 9:30 p.m. But we get together. Each of us brings one of the biggest gaming news stories of the week to the table. Then we have an in-depth discussion about them. It's a collaborative audio feature article, or a CAFA, if you will. And Larry, what do we want them to do with that?
Tattoo it to your forehead.
Exactly. Yes. If you can't catch us live, you can find us over on youtube.com/PvA Radio and all over different podcast services. You can find us on Apple Podcasts, Google. You can find us on Spotify, because now they just let anybody come onto that wants to be on it. So wherever you're listening to us, first of all, thank you so much for taking part in this show just by lending your ear. And then make sure you hit the subscribe button, leave us a rating or review wherever you're listening to us as well, and we greatly appreciate that. So, guys, let's get this week started like we get every week started. I don't really have any housekeeping. You guys have any housekeeping you wanna throw out there?
No.
And a hush rushed over the crowd. So let's talk about what we've been playing. Larry, it looks like you haven't played anything this week, according to the show notes. So, Cody, what have you been up to?
I feel like I haven't played anything.
You've just been playing the game of life.
That's the lowest rated game on Metacritic.
It really is. Review bombed.
Cody, let's start with you. What have you been playing?
I'm still playing The Division. I finally got past the boss I was stuck on last week in Sekiro, and then immediately got stuck on another boss, so I'm taking a break. And I started playing a little bit of Assassin's Creed Odyssey again, because I saw the trailer for the next patch of DLC, and it looks absolutely incredible. So I'm going to try to get back into that game, get to max level, and then get that whole DLC pass, play through that.
Yeah, I've been seeing the articles that are like, it makes it feel like a totally different game. I haven't looked into it at all, but dude, I'm not a huge Assassin's Creed fan. I have Origins because it was part of the Humble Bundle. I've been wanting to just hop into it because it was free. But every time I read something about Odyssey, I'm like, damn, it feels like a good place to jump back in.
Odyssey is more of an evolution than Origins is. I think you don't have to like Assassin's Creed to like Odyssey. You just have to like open world games. And if that's what you like, then I'd say dive in. It's a perfect point. I think they kind of made it a point of first contact for a lot of people. That game is just so good. And the latest DLC it's all about kind of Atlantis and the world of mythology, Greek mythology, their interpretation of it at least. It's kind of how they just went sort of bonkers in the last DLC for Origins with Egyptian myth, which I was super into. So this looks awesome. And I'm pretty much one level away from max level, but I still have a bunch of side stuff to do. So I'm trying to kind of get through that to get to level 50.
Nice. All right, Larry, what have you been playing?
So it's blank because I genuinely can't remember. I've had one of those weeks that feels like mini weeks. For my job, I had to take some teenagers on an out-of-town trip, and that's always just... And I didn't get to take my typical days off before or after that, so I'm just frazzled. I think we played The Division this week, but I don't remember.
I don't think we did.
That may have been 2 weeks ago. I may have, if I've played anything, it's been Apex, but mostly I haven't gamed this week. Sorry.
Yeah. Well, Larry is totally unqualified to speak on video games this week, so we're going to go ahead and boot him from the call. He's out of here. No,
I almost hit leave call to be funny, but then I figured I'd ruin everything.
Yeah, you'd mess up the overlay and everything. I was going to say not to do it, but I figured you'd come to the conclusion. So now we'll have to jump back into The Division, especially hopefully you'll have, well, it's Easter week and you're in ministry. So so he has no time this week either, but maybe one night. So, all right, awesome. Let's see. What have I been playing? I've been playing a lot of Overwatch. Got on. Was last week the week? I think part of it is just because it's Wednesday also and not Monday. So we're having to think back much farther, and we're all old men. Larry's in his mid-30s, so
pretty much out the door.
Yeah. I think it's referred to as the twilight of his life. So, no, I think this was also the week that me, Cody, and Ben played one evening of Apex Legends, and I don't know if you can call it played Apex Legends, but we logged on to Apex Legends and we dropped into games. So I feel like I am not improving at all the more I play it. So that's a wonderful feeling. It's much like a Dark Souls game in that regard.
I was really happy they finally fixed the thick boys in Apex.
Yeah.
They take like 10% less damage now, so that was a neat perk to offset their gigantic hitboxes.
All right, so maybe that's what I need to do. I need to just play one of the big boys. Is Wraith considered a big boy?
Yes,
No.
that makes sense.
And then the new game I've been playing this week, I downloaded Diablo 3 onto my Switch because...
Oh, I have Diablo 3 on my Switch too.
Do you? Is there like I assume there's a multiplayer function to that. Maybe we should...
Yeah, there is. It's a massive part of it.
Okay, cool. I know nothing about Diablo games. I just know it's like kind of grindy and loot driven. And, you know, like when I'm sitting out in the living room and my wife is watching TV, I want something that I really don't need sound to, that I can just kind of jump in and play and feel like I'm progressing a little bit. What I'm doing now, I've probably played like 3 hours of it. I don't feel like any of it's really all that challenging. What class do you play as, Cody?
Monk.
I am a monk as well. So
I have another character too, though. I think it's all the names sort of run together. It's one of the magic users.
Okay. There's like the necromancer.
That's the one. Yeah.
Okay,
the
cool.
necromancer.
Yeah. So anyway, it doesn't feel like super challenging. I feel like I'm just spamming the A button over and over and over again in fights and not really getting threatened. I imagine it gets more challenging as I go through. But I also saw like there's like permadeath in certain options. Is that correct?
Yeah.
So that also had me worried that maybe the challenge level, it takes a long while for it to ramp up. So
I think you just have to increase the difficulty.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I should spend more time reading options when I play video games. So So maybe I'll increase the difficulty so that
Why did you guys get the Switch version? Do you not have phones?
that one's not out
The
yet.
Supreme.
Larry. All right. Once the
Essential.
once that superior version comes out, I will definitely be transferring all of my time and energy to that. So, but also playing it, I was like, man, should I have just bought this thing on PC? But now that I know somebody else has it and there's a possibility I could play, that is also one of the games on Switch that supports local chat functions. So you don't need to use the stupid app. It's like Fortnite. So that's cool too. But yeah, no, I'm having fun with it. It's serving its purpose of just kind of being a mindless, like, go in here and hope you get a cooler weapon. And like my character's just butt naked pretty much right now. So,
Classic monk.
yeah. So, all right. I did want to drop a follow-up in here, and I forgot to. I was talking to Larry about it today. We've been talking a lot about the discless Xbox One, and we finally got an official announcement, official details, and I really just wanted to hit on the price point of this. And so we kind of speculated, this was, episodes ago, about a price point, and we were talking about how, like, 150, 200 seems about the right place. Well, they announced the price is $250. So I wanted to just kind of briefly get you guys' thoughts on a $250 disk driveless Xbox One and how appealing that is. Not necessarily to you, but to somebody that may be looking to jump on the Xbox One train.
It's such a minor difference that I don't know why they wasted their time making this, to be honest. I just don't think that I don't see very many people roll into the store and be like, well, I could get an Xbox One, or I could get one without a disk drive for $50 less. And especially, you brought this up earlier, but some of the bundles that are available, like you can get a $250 Xbox One with a game. So
Doesn't this come with 3 games?
Oh.
Let's see. Well, but the point being, like, let me pull this up.
I remember seeing some sort of bundle related to it. That there was also another story about how they're bundling Xbox Live and Games Pass together as part of if you pay a monthly fee. So that might have been what I was reading, which is another discussion.
All right. So it comes with a controller, a 1 terabyte hard drive, and 3 bundled games. All right. You want to hear these three bundled games?
I know what they are.
Is it Sekiro?
It's Minecraft, Sea of Thieves, and Forza Horizon, not 4, 3.
Remind me again, how much is Minecraft?
You can get Minecraft for $15.
Yeah.
Nice.
Sea of Thieves is still a full price game, I think.
Yeah.
But Forza Horizon 3 is 3-4-year-old game at this point. So, yeah, for $249, you can buy Xbox One, like regular Xbox One S bundles with, like, the Division and like current games for
Fallout 76.
The great game Fallout 76. For $250, like sometimes with deals on Amazon or whatever. And I think, like, when I saw the price point, I looked at it and was like, okay, I guess if you're just thinking about the cost of the parts that you're saving, like, this makes sense. Like, a disk drive isn't the, like, majority of the production cost of an Xbox One, right? So that part to me makes a little bit of sense, but what doesn't add up is, like, Xbox is going to make so much more money on these consoles from people buying games through their storefront and not going to, Best Buy, Target, GameStop, like, to buy a disc-based version of this game. So that's where, like, there's the disconnect to me. I think if you're going to go the length of releasing something that's supposed to, I think a lot of people see this as maybe like an entry point, like an entry level to the Xbox, or something that's supposed to be a cheaper alternative. It needs to be cheaper than just $50 cheaper as an alternative. What do you think, Cody?
I think I'm probably of the same mind. I'm curious. You said it's a terabyte hard drive.
Yeah.
what do the other Xbox One models have in terms of hard drive space?
The newer ones all have a terabyte.
Have a
I
terabyte,
believe.
yeah. Yeah, I just don't like. This seems like a half measure when on the way to a full measure next generation. That's really all. I think it's emblematic of what their strategy is moving forward, and I think I don't know. It seems like if you're kind of on board that digital only future, it's a great entry point, but I don't see many people hopping on at this point.
Yeah. All right. I just wanted to bring that up because I know we kind of this was like the worst kept secret in gaming. So, but now that we have some official details around it, just thought I'd throw that in there. But speaking of official details, as we move into our topics, Cody, lay it on us. What have you brought to the table for us this week?
I am so happy we waited until Wednesday.
me too.
Because we finally got some confirmation on some actual details about the next PlayStation. They're not calling it a PlayStation 5 yet, but I mean, that's likely what it's going to be called. So I'll just refer to it as PlayStation 5 and not just next gen console for the sake of this. But yeah, I'm going to quickly run through some of the details. This was Mark Cerny, who's kind of like the system architect for PlayStation.
And the creator of Knack.
And the creator of Knack, of course. How could we forget that critical darling?
Exactly.
I'm going to quickly run through some of the details because it was largely a hardware announcement and a hardware reveal. Trying to get all the gamer boys and gamer girls excited about some hip new GPUs and CPUs. So that I guess that's probably tipping my hand as to what I think about this announcement overall. But so basically they confirmed something we've known for a while at this point. The dev kits are out in the wild in the hands of their developers for whatever their next PlayStation is. The announcement was largely focused on hardware, and all of these details are courtesy of Wired's exclusive article about this reveal. So the main focus was on the GPU, which it supports ray tracing and resolutions up to 8K, which is impressive for people who are able to handle that. The CPU, their big CPU announcement is kind of like a teasing of 3D audio technology, which is kind of cool. As someone who has a really good pair of headphones for gaming, I think that's cool. And then I guess the biggest kind of technical aspect of it was that there's a solid state drive, which will, as they claim, drastically decrease load times and increase rendering speeds to kind of help characters move faster through worlds and worlds to render a lot quicker.
Yes, and let me just cut you off here for a second to say we got Lane Pavogi in the chat with us, a streamer I watch a ton of, and he is very excited about hardware and SSDs. So just wanted to give him a shout out real quick.
That's fine, and I know there are a lot of people who are excited by this stuff, and this is. I'll go into this a little bit later, but this is definitely par for the course for what Sony's done in past announcements. They announced the PlayStation 4 in a largely similar way, with a large focus on tech prior to kind of delving into their software.
But the difference being, like, they've always put on some kind of event, regardless of how big or small that event is. It's like, hey, we're going to invite some press out. Like, I think about the PS4 Pro announcement, and it was Mark Cerny doing essentially the same thing he was doing in this article, but just like on a stage in front of some people who were like, who cares?
Yeah. Which is maybe a notable change, at least in terms of their understanding of the messaging behind it. There were some other, I guess, more exciting, more kind of generally accessible details. They confirmed that backwards compatibility will be a thing moving forward, which is key when you think about the games that are still yet to launch for PlayStation 4. They confirmed PSVR support, so they're not letting that die. They didn't really confirm anything about software, though there were kind of some winks and nods to the fact that some titles, specifically Death Stranding, could possibly be kind of bridge titles, but nothing defined, nothing really specific. They also, and I thought this quote is key, and my discussion around this topic will largely revolve around kind of this point and a couple others, but Cerny said, "We are cloud gaming pioneers." This is when asked about kind of the future of cloud gaming in the competition. "We are cloud gaming pioneers, and our vision should become clear as we head toward launch." So no details specifically.
Oh, you with us?
Did I cut out there?
Yeah, you cut out just for a second.
Yeah, so basically no specific details about Sony's inroads they're making into the world of cloud gaming yet. Cerny seems to be adamant that they will reveal more as they head towards launch. Also, key to note that he said it will not be releasing in 2019, which big surprise to absolutely no one.
Yeah. Go ahead, Larry, because I think we're going to make the same point here.
Oh no, I was making a joke, but I am actually a little bit, I wasn't totally like expecting it in 2019, but I thought that we might see it by like the holiday of 2019.
Really?
So I'm mildly surprised, but not super shocked.
I think that, and I don't know how big the circles this was running around in, but like, I think a lot of people thought, oh, they're backing out of E3 this year to kind of put on their own event to announce the console, and like thought that the timeline was going to be a little more expedited, forgetting that we had gotten confirmation from, higher ups at Sony that we were still a couple years out last year from this console generation. But I do think that there at least like in like gaming groups I'm a part of on different social media, like there were some people who still felt like, oh man, this may come out this year. Yeah,
see that I've seen the exact opposite. And Jason Schreier has been kind of over and over banging the bell that this is due out sometime in late 2020. Whether or not that's correct, we'll see. But I'm more inclined towards that line of thinking, I guess. And
but does Jason Schreier ever really know what's going on behind the curtain?
Yeah, that guy's a total hack.
Totally kidding. In case the sarcasm has gone over anyone's heads.
Yeah.
So real quick, Lane says, I think I like the direction they're going with this console, and I think that's I think it's an interesting conversation to have of like, what I found most fascinating about the whole way that they did this, the whole weird way that they did this, right, was it just comes across as like everybody else is innovating and doing these like really kind of spinning the world upside down moves, whereas we're gonna make a more powerful box that's gonna just up the traditional gaming experience that you've expected. And I think that played really well for them with the PS4 when some of those innovations were so like when Xbox made all their missteps, like, and I think they're doubling down on that again going into this generation.
Yeah, that's primarily what I wanted to talk about, because this is seemingly confirmation that their strategy moving into the next generation with the PlayStation 5 or whatever they end up calling it, is to basically just give gamers more of what we already know we want, and not necessarily like Nintendo or like Microsoft give us something that is totally new or kind of revolutionary, which is a totally reasonable and a totally like logical and legitimate approach to this, because I mean that's proven to work so far. I'm sort of conflicted about this announcement in general, because this is not the kind of stuff I care about. I'm like, show me software and show me games, which they've been doing over the past few years, granted, but it's a notable that they've chosen to make a reveal they have in the past made on a show floor, just in an interview in Wired. Yeah.
And Lane says, new console seems dated. If it's just more power, needs something new in terms of usage or accessibility. This feels like an update or something. And just the nature of things, like I feel like that's kind of where we're at. There were some leaks a couple of years ago, and there have been rumors since then about Microsoft at least considering this. I'm blanking on all of my words, but going this route of making your console upgradable, much like a computer, buying the individual components, and that didn't go over well. But I think Lane's point is pretty true. At this point, it's just an upgrade. It's just an upgrade. And with these like halfway consoles coming out every couple of years, it is kind of I think it is going to make the line a little blurry on here is the new console.
It's like PC.
Yeah.
Except less modular.
Yeah,
This one is a big step up, and I think that Sony is smart to continue the line of we are the console for hardcore gamers, and we're going to give you the most powerful console to play games on. It's worked for them, and they've done a great job of being the console with the best selection of games. And if they can keep it going, keep it going.
Yeah, I just think of the number of buzzwords that were throughout this announcement, like ray tracing and 3D audio and those sorts of things, and to me that is really to me that speaks more to like these incremental updates that we're making. Like, it's going to look better, it's going to sound better, it's going to run faster, and it's like, well, that was all things that the PS4 Pro did as well. Like, to Larry's point, these incremental consoles, like, as long and look, we're painting a whole picture on just seeing probably a corner of what Sony's revealing. What this felt like more to me was just that there's been a lot of movement in the next generation space with, the announcement of Google Stadia, with Xbox making their statements about cloud gaming. And I think that PlayStation didn't want to get lost in the shuffle of all that. And it was more of like hey, it's like Groundhog Day. We're gonna come out of the hole and let everybody see us, and then we're gonna go right back in. Go ahead.
And Sony's presentations have always been just so strange to me. Like, in gaming, you have all these like interesting characters making these presentations, and I always feel like Sony comes out, it's just a bunch of dudes in suits, and they're just very matter of fact. I don't think they've ever been particularly great at these announcements, and I don't think it's going to really hurt them to announce it in this way.
But I think they just kind of felt like they were getting lost in the conversation, though, because I think if Sony had it their way, they would have an event where Mark Cerny can stand up and show people. Like, I would have loved to have seen firsthand the loading of Spider-Man that is talked about, where it's like fast travel takes 15 seconds on the PS4, and on this dev kit that we have here, it takes less than a second. Like, I think that's something that if Sony had it their way, they would have loved to have put something together and gotten people out. But I just think that the conversation is happening so quickly right now that they had to do something, and the easiest thing to do was like, hey, we're gonna bring somebody in the industry out and talk to them and show them these things, because we're not quite ready to go full public with this yet. But if we wait any longer, Google and Microsoft are going to run away with the conversation.
Yeah, and someone from a tech focused publication as well. I also just don't like, I don't know how a presentation of like the load time, that's really impressive, cutting it down to a second, but I don't know how that presentation plays after the last presentation we saw was Google's mind-blowing, probably like hyperbolic presentation of being able to shift seamlessly from device to device, and all these like massive proclamations they made. I just don't know how that plays as a full-blown presentation.
Yeah, Lane says if they release the sequel to God of War and Bloodborne, I'm in. And I think like that's where so much of the PlayStation boat is, the Sony boat is like, if you have the same games and throw Horizon Zero Dawn onto that pile as well, if we get a second one of those, second Spider-Man, like the console is going to sell. But I do think that like if you're not going to make a just earth-shaking innovation on the console, like, are you going to be able to pull in new fans, new people who are interested not just in the software that you have, but in this cool new way you're going to do it? Like, I don't think Sony's going to be completely lost in this cloud gaming space. The quote comes across as like we don't have anything planned, but we want to talk to you about having something planned. I mean, obviously they're moving forward with stuff with PlayStation Now. They invested a ton of money into Gaikai at the beginning of the generation. Like, they're clearly going to be competitors in that space, but I think they're seeing what Stadia is doing, and they probably have they're hearing the inner rumbles of what the Xbox is doing, and I think they realize like this isn't our strong suit. Like, Sony has never been the services place to go. Like, nobody's buying PlayStation because they love the PSN experience, right? Like, so yeah. I feel like this was a hey, look at me kind of move. I think just we're still here.
Yeah, and it's definitely like in a world where you have, in at least in the three console, like these three console manufacturers, you have kind of if you're positioning Microsoft as kind of the revolutionary moving forward, if you want to position Nintendo as kind of the, I don't know what you what's the word we were using before for Nintendo? Disruptor.
Yeah.
Whether or not it earns that, but you can position it as that largely in this narrative. And then if you want to position Sony as the traditionalist, like that's a role that still has a function in this ecosystem. At least for maybe the next generation. I don't know how much it serves them beyond that. And I'm like, I was talking to a friend of mine about this announcement, and he's like, honestly, give me like what Lane was saying, give me the next Last of Us, like Last of Us 2 and 3, because ostensibly Last of Us 2 will be a bridge title as well. Give me the next God of War, give me Horizon, give me the next Spider-Man. I'm good for the next 7 years. And there's a large contingent of people who are like that, and Sony is not at a loss for an audience for this console. It's punching Microsoft into the ground in terms of sales. But I do worry that there's a difference between this, like, that there's too much of a similarity between the stick to your guns approach, use what's worked, incremental change, that kind of approach, and just resting on your laurels. And that's kind of what I'm worried about in terms of Sony's approach, if this is their approach moving forward.
Yeah, especially given the fact that we've kind of seen that play out in its full life cycle
Exactly.
with Xbox. Like,
exactly.
Think of the number of juggernaut franchises and I would argue that Xbox hasn't had the volume of juggernauts that PlayStation's had in terms of exclusives, but the games that move the needle in the 360 days did not move the needle nearly as much in the Xbox One days. And I don't think you can necessarily look at that and think it's a one-to-one comparison coming in with the PS5, but I think you do have to caution yourself and say, Halo, like Halo was the hot ticket game, and now in the Xbox One, it still has a very dedicated and loyal fan base, but it's lost a lot of its shine.
It's not the console seller it was.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. But I guess if you've got 7 console sellers, if 1 or 2 kind of lose their luster.
Yeah.
And I'm with you, Cody. I think I've got that. Yeah, it'll probably work, and you should also be a little careful not to lean too hard into it mindset. Because for me, I've been a Microsoft guy since Halo 1. I've never owned a PlayStation ever. But this generation, I had a lot of regret that I went the route of Xbox and not the route of PlayStation, because I missed out on so many great games. And I think that more people are going to care about that than are going to care about the hardware. And as long as PlayStation's still knocking it out of the park on exclusives, I don't think they have anything to worry about right now.
I know they mentioned the backward compatibility for PS4 stuff. I know that obviously includes games. Does it also include hardware? Like, are controllers going to be able to work? Because, like, that's the thing Xbox has talked about, their accessories being forward compatible, whatever the hell that means. And so, like, but I do think, like, it'd be cool if I don't have to. If they do the leaked images have shown with like the video screen on it, obviously I want that as my primary controller because, well, you're shaking your head, Cody. I'm thinking about the way that could apply though, and I think about some of the just slow ass processes that the PlayStation has, like to join a party when somebody sends you an invite or something. Like if I can just press a button on my controller rather than having to back into the UI for the PlayStation and just accept the invite from that little screen, like I'm in for that. I think that's way more functional than the stupid touch bar that they have now.
I don't know what that looks like.
I was listening to Beyond and they called it the large paws. The large paws was the touchpad. And I think that there's just a little bit more functionality that can be added to that. But if for my second controller, I don't have to shell out another $60. I can just bring my PlayStation 4 controller over. Like, I'm in for that too.
Yeah, they haven't said anything about that, but it'd be interesting. I'd hope that that's the route they would go. The PlayStation, I'm ultimately more comfortable with Xbox controller, but I do like the PlayStation controller, and even though I feel like the utility of the central touchpad and the speakers in the controller stopped being a thing after like the first 3 years of the console being out.
There's no faster feature I turn off than the speaker on the controller.
Yep.
Because especially because like I play a lot of games like with the volume turned down and like listening to a podcast or something, and like I'm playing NBA 2K and the whistle just comes blaring through my controller when my television's muted. Like, nah, I don't need that in my life.
That was a really cool feature before like we all started playing with headsets that gave us a better idea of when people were sneaking up on us.
Mm-hmm. All right. Anything else you wanted to hit on there,
Nope.
Cody?
That's it. I think we covered a lot of it.
I think there's still a lot more to come too. Like,
Definitely, there will be more to come this year.
Yeah. So I feel like we're again trying to like see the whole picture when Sony's actually only given us a small snippet of it. But I'm just excited that new hardware is coming again. There's something magical about like just waiting for that for the information to kind of seep its way through.
Yeah, the transition in between generations is always exciting.
And then you get on the other side of it and you're like, I have 3 games to play. So the fact I can bring my PS4 library over with me is, it should help with that. All right, guys. Let's move on to my topic. I want to talk about Star Wars Jedi Fallen Order, which GameSpot has not been placing the colon in the appropriate place on this. It's
Wars Fallen.
It's better than Disney's colonization of the High School Musical show for their streaming service.
What?
There are 2 different colons in the title of this show.
Of the High School Musical show?
Yeah, I'll look it up while you vamp.
No, hold on. I've got a screen share thing here so people can see me. High School Musical, Disney. This is just what this show is going to become, guys.
Lane says that colons are hot right now. And
they're always hot, right?
So hot. Okay, so was this just announced like this week?
Yes.
Oh, here it is. Meet the cast. Holy shit, this is... Meet the cast of High School Musical, the musical, the series.
This is also not the worst title they came out with for a show this week, by the way.
Well, you can't just leave us hanging.
There's another one of the Marvel shows they're doing, which is the Vision Scarlet Witch series, is called WandaVision. One character's name is Wanda, you see, and the other's name is Vision. I don't know if you saw this, guys.
It's like Cloak and Dagger, because you've got Cloak and Dagger in the series, but it just doesn't work with WandaVision.
It sounds like a lame ass PlayStation accessory.
WandaVision.
Right, Star Wars Jedi.
Sorry, off topic.
No, that's perfectly fine. I'm glad that you brought that to my attention.
High School Musical, the musical this series.
Oh man. All right, Star Wars Jedi Fallen Order. We finally have story details. We got a trailer. We got a release date as well for the game. Lots of news. Lots of deets. All the hot deets coming in, and I'm glad that we moved the show because Larry wasn't going to be able to make it Monday, and now he is able to make it, and he is a huge Star Wars fan. So
I live Star Wars.
So
I am not.
I was going to talk about this because it's relevant, but I'm like, is Spock in this game? Who knows? All right. All right. I'm not that bad of a Star Wars fan. I've seen all the movies, but Larry's like read books and watched all the series. And so his opinion really matters.
He knows the timeline.
So this is from Timur Hussein over at GameSpot. It says, at Star Wars Celebration this year, developer Respawn Entertainment held a panel for Jedi Fallen Order, its upcoming third-person action game. During the event, Respawn finally discussed details about the game's story, revealed the game's protagonist, the state of the universe he exists in, and the struggles he's fighting to overcome. So I'm just going to kind of give a high-level overview. You play as this Padawan. His name is Cal Kestis. And the game takes place after the third movie, correct, Larry?
Yeah.
And
The third being episode 6. Because that's confusing.
No, episode 3.
episode 3.
Oh,
Revenge
wait,
of the-
yeah. I'm sorry. You're right.
It's the 6th movie, but it's episode 3.
Yeah.
You said it's confusing,
I've
so
never
you covered your
seen
bases.
Star Wars.
So anyway, so at the time the game is set in, like, it's illegal to be a Jedi, correct?
Yeah, just in terms of they've tried to kill literally all of them.
It's highly
Right.
discouraged.
Right. So you're on the run, and you're kind of trying to like hide in plain sight until some event happens and your powers are revealed, and then you're on the run again. So the game looks awesome to me. Larry, I'm going to let you fill in any details that I may have missed here because, like I said, not the biggest Star Wars fan, but this game does look tight. Larry, when you saw this, kind of, how did this move the needle for you? Did this make you more excited about it, kind of seeing what you're going to be playing as?
Well, let me just start with I've been excited since this game was announced. Since Vince was just sitting in that chair.
Since Vince Zampella couldn't even be bothered to stand up to let the audience know about his own fucking video game.
But I legitimately have been excited because Respawn just, I've ranted about Respawn many times on this show. They just knock it out of the park every time. I loved Titanfall. They recently had that little game, Apex Legends. It's been doing pretty well. But where I got more excited about this game was actually when I finally got around to playing Titanfall 2's campaign last year. Because it was one of the most creative campaigns I've ever experienced. It was so awesome. And once I played through that, I was like, I can't wait for this Star Wars game to come out. So that's what has me most excited. Giving Respawn control over a Star Wars game, that's what I'm most hyped about. But now that we've seen what's going on, I am definitely even more excited. Because this is just such a unique period in Star Wars, the period after Order 66. And it's been explored in the books. It's been explored in the Star Wars Rebel series, which is awesome, and you should go check that out. But I love this. Like, you've got to kind of hide who you are. If you're a Jedi, you're going to get hunted down. We got to see one of the Inquisitors. So the lady in the dark armor, that's the second sister. And the Inquisitors are these weird people that the Empire has sort of experimented on. And they've sort of got force powers. They're not quite Sith, but their job is to just hunt down and kill Jedi. And in Rebels, they were a very creepy, kind of scary nemesis. So I'm excited to like be on the run from one of those. I think that'll be a really fun experience. So yeah, just this time period, I am very excited for this game.
So a couple more just high level details here. This is going to be a single player only game. There's no multiplayer aspect to it. And there are going to be no microtransactions, which has gotten EA into hot water on previous Star Wars titles. I don't know if you guys remember a little game called Battlefront 2. A couple gamers got really mad about some stuff in it, and
a few.
Yeah, just a few. I wanted to read a quote. This is from somebody at Lucasfilms, a guy named Steve Blank. He said, quote, "When Respawn approached us with the idea for this game, we were immediately supportive. A single-player, story-driven title in the Star Wars universe was exactly what we were looking for, and we know the fans have been eager for one as well. Focusing on Cal stepping back into the shoes of a Jedi post-Order 66 opens up a lot of gameplay opportunities and rich story threads to develop for this new character and his backstory," end quote. I kind of want to take this conversation in a couple different directions. The first is a portion of this quote I found really interesting where he says, "A single-player, story-driven title in the Star Wars universe was exactly what we were looking for." And, like, I think that can be just, like, an innocent way of saying, like, oh, we were just really excited about this concept. But knowing the history of this partnership between EA and the Star Wars franchise, this more read as like, this is what we've been wanting all along. We've wanted video games to tell individual stories in this expansive universe that we've created, and finally, after what, 6-7 years of this partnership being arranged, we finally have something along those lines. Do you think that this is a game that's going to kind of bring the triangle of fans, EA, and the Star Wars franchise itself kind of back into alignment?
Well, first, the quote just it just doesn't ring true to me in regards to this is what we've been trying to do the whole time. Just because the other games that have been canceled, like that's what they were rumored to be, was single player story driven experiences.
But those were canceled by EA, whereas this is someone from Lucasfilms that's saying this, you know.
Gotcha. But it still just doesn't make sense to me, I guess. In terms of like we've been waiting for this. Oh wait, never mind. I see what you're saying. I'm sorry. As we established before the show, I'm sort of exhausted right now. But anyway, any case, shake it off. Moving on. What was the question?
If you think that this game, Jesus Christ, Larry. If you think that this game is going to be the thing that kind of brings this relationship back into harmony.
I do think so. As cool an idea as it is to have these multiplayer Star Wars experiences, I think where Star Wars really shines is in the stories that it tells. At its heart, it's a fairy tale, and getting to live that out, it just happens better in a story. So I think the fans are going to enjoy it from that perspective. If you take microtransactions out of the equation, I think EA is going to do a lot better.
A lot better how?
Well,
just perception-wise?
Yeah, perception-wise, but also I don't know how else they can screw the game up. You know, like typically when EA like messes a game up, it's because they've gotten greedy, and I'm hoping that this will sort of insulate this game from that, if that makes sense.
Yeah. All right, Cody, your thoughts?
It's not going to be the great harmonizer, I don't think. Maybe it'll realign some of those parties, but it's not going to like. This partnership has already taken a lot of a beating on all sides from EA, Lucasfilm, and from the audience, that I don't know if any singular game can kind of restore all three of those parties together. My thoughts on this game are, I guess, much more critical than Larry's are. First of all, I don't know what this game is yet. They've only described things about this game. I haven't seen anything from it, and I'm not like one who's automatically in on Star Wars, the fantasy of a Jedi. So that's not selling me on it. I just need to know what this game is before I really render a judgment. It sounds like it's semi-open based on what comments made after this reveal. It sounds like you can kind of the description of the combat sounded similar to, at least in theory, what God of War was, which is that it's easy to do, but difficult to master, which I'm always a fan of. And I admire Respawn's design talent enough to kind of have faith in them to deliver on that. I just need to know more about this game. I would have much rather played the Amy Hennig single player Star Wars game, because it doesn't sound like you were playing as a Jedi. It sounds like you were just playing as a bounty hunter, which is inherently a fantasy that I am more fascinated in. I'm more fascinated in the non-space samurai people in Star Wars.
Which is why Cody has all seasons of Dog the Bounty Hunter on
yes
on DVD.
On Blu-ray, please, 4K.
Oh yeah, sorry. And why he just carries bear mace around with him everywhere. Has nothing to do with his felonious background. Nothing to do with it. He doesn't believe in lethal force.
Yeah.
For me, the thing that's just sort of weird for me is, like, typically I hear Star Wars, I'm all about it. But what I'm most excited about is that Respawn's doing it. this go around.
That is
Star
what-
Wars is just bonus points.
Yeah.
Well, and I find it interesting is you've got Stig Asmussen. I don't know if I'm saying his last name right, but he was a creator of the original like God of War trilogy, who's now working as the director of this game. And so
He worked on.
what's that?
He worked on God of War 3, I believe.
Yeah. So, like, how much of that's going to bleed over? I don't think from like I mean, I guess from a gameplay perspective, people really liked it, but games have changed so much, I think, since the days of God of War 3. Like, how much is that is going to get carried over? I'm with you, Cody. I don't think this is going to be some sort of Lane says, you guys know a lot about these topics. Are you involved in the games industry? So Larry and I hosted a podcast for, now 4 years, where we covered gaming news. Cody has been a freelance writer in the industry for quite some time. He interned at Game Informer for a summer, and I have also written for several different sites, with my longest tenure being at Twinfinite. So,
In and around.
In and around. There we go. That's a good way of putting it. I do. Think
I have played games.
And you love Star Wars.
Larry still owns an N64.
I own every console I've ever had,
So
in case I want to play them again.
Anyway, I don't think this is going to be the great harmonizer, because I don't think that there is anything that can be the great harmonizer, because I think the desires of each party are just kind of diametrically opposed to one another. I think Star Wars fans want a great Star Wars story told. Disney just doesn't want their brand shit on repeatedly, and EA wants to make fistfuls of cash in every way imaginable. And so I just think, like, I don't know what that game looks like. I don't think that this game is going to make just like I don't think anybody at EA is going to be Scrooge McDuckin into a like pool of gold coins after this game releases, because I just think like a $60 game with no microtransactions in today's era can only go so far in terms of making you money.
Spider-Man did pretty well.
But I think about, like, you know, all the other properties that EA has, and the fact that when they release them out into the wild, they continue to make them money. You know, you think about all of their sports franchises, you think about Battlefield, even like, you know, Apex Legends, which is like the gold standard for EA right now. Like, well, no, FIFA Ultimate Team is still the gold standard for EA, but like, as far as like striking that balance between monetization and public perception, Apex Legends, I think, is the closest game that we have to it in EA's library right now. But even that, they had to figure out how to monetize post-launch. I mean, it's a free title, so. But yeah, so I just don't think that I don't think the motivations can align in such a way that every party in this relationship is ever going to be happy. Because EA signing that deal was like, you know, when they signed that deal years ago, it was like, cha-ching, cha-ching, let's take this check to the bank now. And it just hasn't played out that
all we
way.
got for 7 years was mobile games and Battlefront.
Exactly.
Yeah. I think ultimately Disney and Lucasfilm are better off approaching Star Wars, the brand, as they're hopefully starting to approach Marvel, the brand, in terms of games. Like, individually finding developers who can make the correct game in the correct way. Like Insomniac and Spider-Man, perfect partnership. Telltale made some decent Marvel, like just kind of adventure Marvel games with Guardians of the Galaxy, and I think they're kind of branching out with Square and doing kind of an Avengers game supposedly. So I think they just need to approach it in that way. EA clearly is not invested in this partnership for the quote unquote right reasons. They are for them, but not for either other party involved in this.
Yeah. And then kind of the last question that I wanted to ask was, and you've touched on this a little bit, Cody. We've seen EA axing these kind of first these single player experiences, you know, BioWare's been moved into Anthem, which is a games of service space. Amy Hennig's Star Wars game got cut and Visceral closed down, and now we see this game where they're doubling down on the messaging of single player only and microtransactions. Is this a turning of the tide for how EA is going to be approaching games in the future, or was this just a we need something to salvage the relationship kind of deal? Like, what do you think this says about the industry as a whole, with EA being kind of a pacemaker, a pace setter in the industry?
I don't think that this is a turning point for EA by any means. Just if there's one company that's really benefiting from this surge of games of services, I would say that it's EA. I think that it probably is a lot more centered on, hey guys, you've had this this franchise for 7 years. Are you going to do anything with it? And the other interesting thing for me from the quote that you read earlier was when Respawn approached us with the idea for this game. I didn't realize that. I thought that it had originated with EA, and then they found someone to do the game. So I wonder how much of it was just Respawn was driving this more so than EA, and it aligned with, well, crap, we really do need to release some kind of game since we're canceling everything.
Yeah.
Yeah. Do we know how long Respawn has been working on this? That's unclear to me.
There were rumors. It was like, I want to say it was 2 years ago at least, that there were like rumors about job listings that went up for somebody to create a game in the Star Wars space that like had X experience, and like people kind of drew conclusions about what that meant. But as far as officially knowing about it, I think it was just kind of prior to last year's E3. So I would say at least 2.5 years.
Yeah, because I remember those initial rumors, and you have to imagine high level creative discussions were ongoing even prior to that. This sounds like to me, this seems like it's the swan song, if you want to even call it that, for this partnership. I do think it's notable that EA is really pushing this is a single player experience thing after Anthem has backfired. The narrative around Anthem was you've taken this beloved RPG developer, and whether or not, I don't think this is totally true, because I think BioWare was also pushing the direction of we want to do something different, as we've seen in Schreier's reporting. But the narrative around that game has been EA has taken this beloved RPG single player developer and shoved them into the multiplayer like games as a service space. And so I think this is the way this is being kind of marketed and pushed on the press line, is that it's a corrective to that, which I think after last year and the year before, when like the most critically acclaimed games, some of the highest selling games were single player experiences, I think is notable. I think we've talked about this before. There will always be a market for quality single player experiences. Whether or not they're done at this tier and this level is another thing, but I think it's notable that EA is on the back foot with this game. And I'll be interested to see how they continue to push that messaging.
Yeah, and I think it makes sense that Respawn has this, and this game has to only be like 2.5, 3 years down the road, because what we have to remember is that EA only bought Respawn within that time frame, and they wouldn't have given the Star Wars license to a third-party studio that they just had some sort of publishing deal with. They wouldn't have gotten this game until they brought them into the company as a developer for them. And
also at E3, they weren't far enough along for Vince to stand up out of his chair.
Yeah. Well, and I think Vince is probably a big reason that this game is taking the direction it's taking. I think Vince is kind of a bulldog, and you read stories about him when it comes to like Titanfall and stuff like that. He is very outspoken, and while he tries to navigate that publisher developer relationship with some semblance of professionalism, he's not afraid to speak his mind when it comes to things that aren't necessarily going his way. But you think about the studio that was making Amy Hennig's game, that was Visceral, and like you think about the properties that they had touched, like Dead Space wasn't coming back, right? And then they did Battlefield Hardline, which some have called the greatest first-person shooter to ever be released, right?
Some you can find one tweet on Twitter about anything turned into a news story.
Exactly. So, like, I guess EA was like stepping back and saying, we got to cut one of these projects. And it makes more sense for us to just close this whole studio that doesn't have anything in the library that we're looking to bring back. Whereas Respawn has, you have to imagine Apex Legends was in the works in some way, shape, or form. They don't want to abandon the Titanfall IP or, the work that's been done there. So let's let Respawn carry through on their vision for this single player game, and we're just going to cut ties here. I'm with you guys. I don't think it's a turning point for how they see the industry. I just think that this is what has to happen in order to somewhat salvage this relationship, because not only does this impact their relationship with Disney and Lucasfilms and the Star Wars franchise, it affects their ability to go out and broker a deal with some other kind of franchise holder to say, hey, we'd love to make licensed games in this universe. And they're like, well, we see the shit you put out with the Star Wars. We don't want to give you that license. So anyway, any other thoughts on this? I talk more from the industry side, Larry. I'm sure you have far more Star Wars thoughts.
I do want to say that one last story aspect that really interests me about this time period is for the Padawans that escaped execution. They kind of have to make their way through the galaxy adrift with no master to teach them the ways of the Force. And I think that makes for some really interesting story arcs. Because in most Star Wars situations, you've got the traditional fairy tale model. You've got this old wise mentor that's going to guide you into this new way of understanding, and I really enjoyed those stories where this person just kind of has to figure it out. Mm-hmm. So I look forward to that. I look forward to the Inquisitors. That's such a unique aspect of Star Wars that I think provides some pretty terrifying situations. And I'm also with Cody on I look forward to seeing more about how this game will actually play. Is it going to be more RPG focused like a lot of single player Star Wars experiences have been, or am I going to get pushed through a straight up narrative? I can't wait to find out, but I am excited either way.
I hope for the latter, and I hope it's tightly told, because I think about Rogue One and how much I liked Rogue One, and it's because it was self-contained and it had its story and it told its story and it left before it wore out its welcome. And I'd love to see that in this game. And I think if the colon gives me pause in thinking that that's what this is going to be, that there's Star Wars Jedi : some other game that's on the way as well. And so it may get out of hand, but yeah, I just want something that's tightly told and I'm in.
Yeah.
So I'm voting for the latter. I don't want like a big RPG. You make Cal the Cal that you want. I want them to tell his story the way they feel it needs to be told.
And I will say the series that they had, Rebels, that took place in this time period, that's really what that show was. I mean, it was a regular TV show, but it was 3 seasons that had a point they were working toward. They told their story and they finished it. Mm-hmm. So I'm with you on that. It doesn't necessarily have to wrap up in this game. Like it could be 2 or 3 games, but I do want, like, tell me a story and end it. Don't just see how many Cal games we can pump out.
Yeah. All right, Larry, what is your topic, my friend?
Dude, I'm so excited for this conversation. So Netflix has a documentary that I would encourage you all to go watch. It was really entertaining. A good glimpse at games development. It's called Playing Hard, and it's a documentary that follows. Huh?
I thought you said it was called Walk Hard.
I hate you.
How long have you had that?
Dude, I've been waiting the whole time.
Is that the movie with Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson?
No, that's Walk Hard, the Dewey Cox story.
Boy, I'm thinking of Stand Tall.
Yeah.
Is that the one with Kevin Hart?
No. So Luke and I have this game we play where one of us will reference a pop culture work, and then the other will just get it slightly wrong, and we'll just set off this chain of slightly wrong things, and that's not what I was trying to do. My bad.
All right, my apologies. Let's get back on the rails here. The show is running quite long, but I'm looking forward to this conversation as well.
Playing Hard. So Playing Hard follows the story of the development of For Honor, a fun little game about Vikings and knights and samurai. But it follows it from the pitching of the idea by Jason Vandenberg all the way through the development and launch of this game, and even a couple weeks after launch, I think, maybe just a few days after launch. I didn't put any like questions in here. I don't want to steer it in a particular direction. I kind of just let's talk about this documentary. Cody, you haven't had a chance to watch it yet, so you just chime in wherever you feel it's appropriate. But we can summarize very briefly the story of the launch of For Honor. This was Jason Vandenberg's like dream. He was a 20-year veteran in the games industry. He'd been pitching this game for 10 years, he said. And finally, it got accepted. And for him, this game is why he got into developing games. He wanted that story where you just set out to fight for honor, whatever that means to you. And so pitch was finally accepted. And you get to watch as his team grows. He earns the trust of the studio. They get more resources. And you also get to watch as he has to relinquish some creative control of the game, and other people begin to get a say in it, and he's not real thrilled with that. And ultimately the game launches. It's successful, but he is ousted from the team that's developing the game. He won't get to work on future titles if there are future titles. And it was really interesting, really informative, but it was also just a really good story, I thought. So I guess I kind of want to start with, did you learn anything about games development? Is there anything surprising to you from this?
I don't think I necessarily... This sounds like arrogant, and I'm not meaning it to come across as arrogant. I think like the plot points of it had been chronicled so well, like in the coverage of the game within gaming media, that I didn't learn anything new in the sense of just like the struggle, right? I did learn that I would not want to work for this Jason guy, because I watched half of it a few days ago, and then I finished it this afternoon, and my wife was sitting in the room with me, and she just listened to him talk for like 2 minutes, and she was like, "This guy's weird." and like Jason, Vandenberg, is that his last name?
Yeah.
Jason Vandenberg, like, he's real intense. You can tell that this is something like he's given so much thought to, and but he's one of those like enigmatic characters who knows he's enigmatic and like leans into it overly in a lot of ways. So where it's like he's like, I am mysterious and I'm going to do everything in my power to let you know that I am mysterious.
So he talks a lot about his upbringing and how much time he spent around theater, and he is very much that person. He's a very dramatic individual. I was this weekend for my job, I had to take some teenagers to this thing at a college, and in one of the workshops, breakout session things, there was this girl who was a self-proclaimed theater nerd, and I was just like, it's like sitting here listening to Jason Vandenberg, just that manner of speaking, and everything I say has great depth.
Yeah, very, very dramatic. He kept it. Now that all that being said, like, it was really cool to get a glimpse into the nuts and bolts of all of it and kind of seeing real people. I thought the documentary did a really good job of putting flesh on the people whose struggles we read about. Yeah. I should have wrote names down, but the like actual the guy who was like the producer of the game, he was in charge of all the timelines, and he spoke a ton of French.
I think that was Stefan Cardi.
Yes, that's it. Like, he's on a call at one point in the documentary, and he's like, I needed to hire 500 people to do this brand push last May, and I wasn't able to hire a single one of the people that I needed for that brand push. And now you're saying I've got to go back in and try to hire those people again, like this was a few months before launch or something like that. And I work in a production field now of like, you know, hard deadlines and having to deliver things. I'm not having to hire 500 people, and I'm not having to ship millions of copies of a game and, you know, deliver to a giant corporation like Ubisoft. But I know the stress of having to deal in timelines, and I think it just made it far more relatable when I'm reading about these stories of like, you know, they were like, look, we submitted our game for gold certification on December 7th. It's our one shot to get it right. If either Xbox or Sony comes back and says this isn't good to go, we miss our date. And I just connect with that in a real way. I think it's useful for anybody who's into gaming to watch this documentary to understand that when you see that headline that's like For Honor delayed, there's a lot of shit that went behind that. It wasn't just like, oh, we got a little lazy and we need another month. Like that's not what it is.
Yeah, I think you hit the nail on the head just describing it as it puts flesh on things that we read about all the time. And so often, I say we as gamers, I don't mean we, the three of us, because I don't think we're really guilty of this. But so often, like, as games are being developed and features have to be changed and things don't come out the way that we anticipated, we're just so quick to jump on Twitter and lash out at the developers. And I think anyone who's ever done that should just sit down and watch this documentary and learn that very often the developers were very passionate about doing the things that you wanted to see them do. But at the end of the day, the people over them didn't give them the resources, or something fell apart. And like, there are reasons that these decisions get made. So it was really good. It's a really good tool to give us some empathy for the whole situation. And Stefan Cardy, his story was fascinating to me because he winds up sort of having a breakdown of sorts and just disappears to a remote cabin in the woods for how long was he out there? It's like a month, wasn't it?
Yeah, it was like 3 weeks or a month. All he said was, I disappeared around Christmas, and like the scene where he comes back is like at the beginning of the year. So so yeah, that was really eye-opening too. Like just the dance of passion and disappointment, and like adding weight to the disappointment by understanding the passion that people have for the projects. Like I thought it just did a really good job of showing the motivations of, you know, of the different people in the game, and kind of that we talk a lot about work-life balance on this podcast, and we talk a lot about that in the context of game developers not being afforded the opportunity to have it. One thing that on that front though that really jumped out to me was you had the scene where Stefan, what's his last name,
Cardy, I think, Cardi,
where he comes back after that. But then there's a scene during the last like push for the game when they were like trying to make the final deadlines, where they get everybody together and they're like, all right, you guys need to stop being negative. You know, we're trying to address the work culture and trying to do things better. So we just need you to put your head down, get through this, and stop bringing the negativity into the office. And it's like one of the head people on this game just had a fucking mental breakdown and had to step away from the project at a like super critical point in it. And you're looking at all these people who make far less money and probably have just as equal amount of expectations and responsibilities that are put on them, and saying like, suck it up and move forward. Like if there's that much lack of health at the head, like, can you imagine the people who are putting in 14, 16 hours a day, like to get this art asset right, or this, you know, line of code right. Like that part, I kind of got a little like red in the face because I was angry about it.
Another side of the humanizing of the developers that I really enjoyed was was just watching this big team producing this game. How every step of the way they had these tournaments going, and they had people coming in from other departments and higher up in the company to come and practice, and they just genuinely loved what they were doing. And I just liked seeing all these people creating something that they really loved. And then toward the end, as things fall apart. So Luke and I mean, we've never done something as creatively large as producing a video game. But as part of our work for years, we used to work together to produce a week of camp. And we approached it very much like a cohesive experience from point A to point B. And there was a lot of creative process going through that. But I am the person who, you put all this hard work into something and then it's time to like put it out there. And I just, every time, Luke can tell you this, every time I'm like, this is crap. Everything we've done is crap. It all sucks. It's going to fall flat. It's terrible. And so there was a lot going on at the end, approaching release that I found very relatable.
Yeah. Yeah. So, and then I think another thing that, again, I don't know how new this was, but just like seeing the dichotomy of how these people acted when they were like at E3 or at PAX, and they were, they were going up on stage to talk about this game, and they were so confident about what it was that they were going to deliver, and juxtaposing that to like the way that they felt internally about the way the development was going for the game. Like, that pretty much everybody that gets on stage at E3 is lying to you.
Yeah.
And it's just because like I was a theater kid in high school, and it always was that you never felt like it was going to come together until the final dress rehearsal, right? Like you were just kind of flying by the seat of your pants. You were still calling for lines like 2 nights before the opening curtain, and you just never felt like it was all there. And so when you're talking to people to come see the show, you're like, oh yeah, it's going to be great. Things are going along awesome. When in reality, like, it doesn't coalesce until the very, very end. And it very much, the documentary does a really great job showing you how that is, like how real that is in game development, that it's just this mishmash of, we hope this works, and here's a vertical slice here, and here's a trailer here. We're making changes to the trailer 20 minutes before the actual show goes on. Like, I don't know.
And they still got it wrong.
And they still got it wrong. Yeah. Like, it was super fascinating. Like, these guys are captaining these giant ass ships, and they're being asked to turn them on dimes. And it's just wild. Like, I watched it and I gained an appreciation for the facts that I already knew. I just appreciate them all the more now.
And I haven't seen this, but it makes it even more remarkable that any game ever gets made, or any game that ever does get made, is even halfway good. Like, we just read about this with Anthem's development, where that trailer they showed at E3, they didn't know what the game was until like 5 months out from release. Like that, yeah. No one knew that flight was going to be a permanent thing in the game. And that game, that's an example of a game that didn't end up coming together, and it cost the developers a lot. But it's like that whole idea of, like, we've been talking about this extensively, but like crunch, and especially towards the tail end of development, whether or not this is an innate part of the process, or whether this is something that can be curbed and kind of managed throughout the rest of the process, is fascinating to me. And just like any occasion that anybody can take to make it more human and more relatable for people who are consuming this content, I think is worthwhile. Because it is like, these are people whose lives are filled with joy from this process, but also whose lives are absolutely ruined and devastated by this process. And I think that dichotomy is something that we all have to reckon with.
And you also, in that vein, you get a good look at how it affects their families as well. The hours spent away from home. So that was another good aspect of it.
I do want to point out one scene in particular near the end. It was when it became abundantly clear that Jason Vandenberg was not going to be asked to stay on once the project launched. And he was like up in a Ubisoft executive's grill at this launch party that hey, I know the reason that you're not wanting to bring me back, and I just want to let you know I've heard those reasons before, and I don't think they're good reasons. Basically chewing this dude out in the middle of a crowd of a bunch of his employees, and I just was like, he's clearly aware that this is being filmed, that this is going to be a documentary. Like, how do you come back from that and work it? And maybe he's just so jaded by the experience, he doesn't want another job in that portion of the industry. Maybe he wants to, make independently make games or whatever. But it was just like, showed his ass so much to where it was like, this dude was really like just done with this process by the end of it.
I think the thing you have to consider there is going back to like, this is what this guy grew up hoping to make games to do.
Yeah,
I think that probably made it a lot more volatile.
10 years of his life.
Yeah. But then also, this is a weird place to transition into this. As weird as this Vandenberg fellow is, I found him very relatable. Just the type of person who's like driven and they want to get the project done and they'll trample over other people's feelings. That is me. And I've done a lot to address that and change that as I've gotten older. And I think there are probably a lot of people that wouldn't perceive me that way anymore, and that's fantastic. Unfortunately, Luke's seen firsthand. But there was a scene that stuck with me where as things began to ramp up and get more busy, he talked about how he scared people and he just didn't have time anymore to like explain and make sure their feelings weren't hurt. He was just going to say what he had to say and keep the ball rolling. And I think for people that are in leadership positions, like that's something you got to find some balance in. And I don't think Vandenberg had a good balance in it. I don't want to say that, but I do want to say that I found that struggle with how to relate to people really relatable.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, well, and the scope of that project just changed basically overnight. It was meant to kind of be not like a UbiSoft art game, but like a smaller scale game. And then Ubisoft came after one presentation and was like, hey, let's just do this like full $60 box release. And they were like, oh, okay. And they're like, here's a bunch of money, go hire a bunch of people and make this game for us. So
another interesting thing in the development process was how much time Vandenberg wrote story for this game that just never became a part of the game. And some of it sounded pretty cool. I was kind of sad we lost out on it. But that's when you work with other people, you got to be able to let go of some of the creative process.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And
then the last thing that I want to draw out is I think he had some good conversations regarding violence. A shooting happened while this game was being developed, and he spent some time like kind of really mourning that and talking about how he personally is a pacifist, and sometimes people talk to him about like why do you make games with violence when you don't believe in violence as something that you should participate in. And I liked that he talked about the violence as part of the human experience, and it's beneficial to explore that and why it happens and how to avoid it, even if it's not something that you think should ever be participated in. Mm-hmm. They talked about that several times throughout, and I thought that was good. I don't know. Any other thoughts? We can close this out.
I'll just leave it as I don't think it was like the best documentary ever. Like I think you have to really be interested in the subject matter to enjoy the documentary. But if you are a fan of video games and want to just get even a glimpse into why we are constantly having conversations about changes needing to be made to the way that games are made, go watch the documentary and like see how real people dealt with that struggle. So yeah, that's really the only point I wanted to make on it.
I'm even more excited to watch it now.
Awesome.
All right. Well, that was my whole goal, was just to sell Cody on going back and watching it.
Sold.
All right. Awesome. All right, guys. Well, let's move on to everybody's favorite game that we play at the end of this show. Gaming 2 Truths and a Lie, Gaming Edition, the game.
Do you have a lie this time around?
Yes, I do.
Luke's whole life is a lie.
Oh my gosh! Wow!
Cutting deep.
That cut very, very deep, man. All right, our game this week. I don't know if you've ever heard of this one. It's kind of obscure. Mass Effect 2.
Is that the sequel to Mass Effect?
Yes. In fact, I don't have a
Mass
description written
Affect.
I don't have a description written for this, but Mass Effect 2 is the sequel to Mass Effect 1 and the prequel to Mass Effect 3. So, all right, guys. So the way this game works is I have 2 truths here and 1 lie. You guys have to try to suss out which one is the lie. Let me remind everybody of what the score is. I have 6 points. How do I get points, you say? Well, if I read out all the responses and these 2 knuckleheads can't figure out which one is a lie, I get the point. Larry, yet to make it on the board, has a big old goose egg sitting down there. And then Codsworth right in the middle with two points to his name. All right. You guys ready? Go ahead.
So I've had a situation where I had to deal with a teenager not being truthful, and one of the elders in my church was like, well, we were trying to figure out the truth of this situation. He's like, well, did you feel like he was telling you the truth? And I was like, yeah, but I basically just believe everything anyone says to me.
I was hoping you'd say, I think he was telling the truth, but I haven't scored any points in. All right, here we go. You ready?
Ready.
If you fly to the local cluster and investigate Uranus, EDI will say a few humorous lines at one's attempts to launch probes into the planet. That's an onion right there. That's got layers. Number 2. Etched in the corners of the command center of the Normandy SR-2 are the letters STS, a nod to the first shuttle in NASA's fleet. Number 3. This is the only game in the trilogy where the player assumes control of a character other than Commander Shepard. All right? So we have 2 truths and a gaming lie laid out here. I think Larry was the first respondent last time we played this game. So, Cody, I'm going to turn it over to you. Which one of these is the lie? Is it Uranus? Is it STS? Or playing as a character other than Commander Shepard?
I think it's number 2.
All right. He's going to say it is number 2. Larry.
They all sound true to me. So I've never played Mass Effect, and I'm going to take a gamble on number 3.
All right. Somebody has scored a point. Did somebody make it onto the board this week? No, because Cody got it right.
I know enough about Mass Effect 2.
So, when the collectors attack and board the Normandy, the player takes control of the pilot Joker for a short section of the game. So, you're not playing as Commander Shepard at that point. And, like...
That Uranus thing is 100% true.
Yeah, if you're going to put Uranus in a game, how are you not going to make jokes about it? Especially when you're going to launch probes into Uranus.
I remember doing that.
And then he remembers doing it in the game. All right, guys. Yeah. That's going to close us out for this week. Want to thank everybody for tuning in over here on twitch.tv /PvA radio. This is not our normal night, so if you're tuning in on Wednesday, come back on Monday at 9 o'clock Eastern time, and we will have our next episode. But let's wrap it up. Larry, who are you? Where can people find you? And what will you be tweeting about this week when you can?
I'm Larry. You can find me on Twitter at LairHuntsZombies. And basically next week, you can starting Sunday, you can just anticipate a backlog of tweets that are irrelevant now because those events have long since passed.
Oh my gosh, guys, can you believe that this Mueller report? All right, Codsworth.
I'm Cody. You can find me at ProElectioneer on Twitter. In all honesty, I'm probably not going to be tweeting that much because I'll be home this weekend and not really on the Tweeters or the Facebooks. So I'm going to be relaxing, taking some time away from social media.
All right, awesome. Well, my name is Luke Croft. You can find me on Twitter at Hoagie_OW. This week, I do have an announcement I'm going to be making this week. I've finally got some stars aligning. I just got to get a couple more ducks in a row, and then I'll be making an announcement about a new project I've been working on that I'm like super, super excited about. So follow me over there. You'll find out. We'll talk about it next week on the podcast as well. But again, thank you guys so much for tuning in. This has been PvA Radio, the weekly show where each of us brings one of the biggest gaming news stories of the week to the table, and then we have an in-depth discussion about it. Consider it your collaborative audio feature article. And Cody, what do we want them to do with that?
Tattoo it on your weenus.
Probe your anus. If you can't catch us live over here, you can find us on youtube.com/PvA Radio and on podcast services everywhere, wherever you're listening to us. Thank you for taking time out of your day to let us be a part of it, and leave us a subscription, a follow, a like, a review, whatever you want to do to show your love. Any little thing helps. But until next week, guys, we love you. Goodbye.
Why, that's the second biggest monkey head I've ever seen.
I used to be an adventurer like you. Then I took an arrow in the knee.
The definition of insanity is